The morning rush at Hatch's Corner moved in a steady rhythm of forks and low talk. Behind the counter, Hannah, 20, in a white apron, rang up another check. 3 stools down, Adeline Reeve watched a man in a faded gray flannel slide a worn $10 bill across the wood and smirked, loud enough to carry. Some people really stretch a paycheck. Nathan didn't turn. Hannah took the bill, smiled, and held out the takeout bag. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Cole." He nodded once and walked out. Hannah looked up, voice steady. "Ma'am, you don't know what you just laughed at." The bell over the door was still swinging when Adeline turned back to her assistant. Devon, 28, 3 years out of Cornell hospitality, didn't lift his eyes from the tablet. He had learned not to react when she was sharpening. "Square footage," she said. 1,800 on the ground floor. Basement prep kitchen. Lot in back. He tilted the screen toward her. Owners a Marlene Hatch. 62. Operates it free and clear. No outstanding lien. Margin? If we tear it down? Per the prelim from Charlotte, 11 to 14% better than the Battery Park parcel. Adeline nodded, the way she nodded at everything she had already decided. The booth in the corner gave her a clean view of the door, the counter, the kitchen pass. She had been in Asheville for 36 hours and she already disliked it. Too many people moved here on purpose. Slow, like time was something you could afford to spend. At 7 sharp, the bell over the door rang again. The man in the gray flannel walked in like he had walked in 100 times before. Sawdust on his forearms. A small white scar at the knuckle of his left thumb. He took the stool at the far end of the counter, without looking at anyone. Hannah didn't ask. She set down coffee and a plate, 2 eggs, a slice of country ham, a buttered biscuit, a single thin disc of apple, and slid the ticket toward him. Sunday plate, $9. He ate without his phone. He didn't read. He didn't speak. "That's him," Adeline said. "Low, he was here yesterday too." "Construction? Look at his hands." She tilted her head. "Cabinet work, maybe. Custom." She let the moment turn over. Imagine spending your last $10 on the same plate every morning. Devon, who had grown up in a town not unlike this one, said nothing. Across the room, Nathan lifted his coffee. His shoulders didn't change. If he had heard, he gave no sign. Hannah did. She wiped the counter near his elbow longer than the counter needed. "Sleep okay?" she asked him. "Some. Mia got the school thing tomorrow?" 8 o'clock, he said. "Same bench." She nodded, as if she already knew. Nathan finished, set his fork down at 4:30 exactly across the plate, paid in cash, and left through the bell. Adeline watched the back of his gray flannel disappear past the window. She gave it 3 minutes, then walked to the counter just as Marlene came out of the kitchen wiping her hands on a towel. Mid-60s. Strong jaw, eyes that had been measuring people since before Adeline was born. "Miss Hatch, that's me. I'd like to talk about the building. Building's not for sale. I'd like to offer twice market." Marlene folded the towel once, carefully. "Then I'd like to say no twice." Adeline smiled, the way she smiled in rooms where she was used to winning. The smile cost her something this time, and she felt it. She had not been turned down in a hallway, a meeting, or a deal in 11 months. She walked out without buying coffee. In the car, she sat with her hands on the wheel for a moment. The rejection was clean, the way an old woman rejects something. There had been no apology in it, no bargaining room, no flicker of interest in the second offer she had not yet made. The woman behind the counter had said no, the way a person says the sky is blue. Devon waited in the passenger's seat. He had watched the exchange through the window glass without pretending not to. "She'll come around," he said carefully. "No," Adeline said. "She won't." She put the car in gear. By noon she was in the rented Audi at the curb, watching the diner's front door from across the street. She told herself it was due diligence. The truth was simpler. The man in the gray flannel had not flinched, and people who did not flinch interested her more than people who agreed. At 1 o'clock he came out, takeout bag in one hand, keys in the other. The truck was a Ford F-150, the green of a forest in late autumn. Paint sun faded along the roof. He set the bag on the passenger seat with the care a man uses for something that might tip. Adeline pulled into traffic 3 cars behind. He drove the way he ate. Steady. No phone glow against his cheek. He took the river road out of downtown, slowed at a turnout above the French Broad, and parked under a cottonwood. He didn't get out. He sat with his hands on the wheel and looked at the water for 10 minutes. Then he pulled back onto the road. She almost lost him at the second light. A delivery truck cut between them, then peeled off, and she found herself stopped 2 feet from his tailgate at the red on Patton Avenue. That was when she saw it, taped to the back of his rearview mirror, facing inward, visible to her only because the sun hit at the right angle, was an old corporate ID badge. Laminated edges yellowed, a photograph of the man in front of her, 5 years younger, in a charcoal suit, and under the photograph, 3 lines of black serif type. Nathan Cole, founder and chief executive officer, Cole and Hartwell Group. The light went green. He drove on. Adeline did not move until the car behind her honked. Cole and Hartwell. She knew the name the way she knew her own social security number. Second year at Wharton. Strategy seminar. The case study had been a clean little jewel. A farm-to-table boutique group. Founder-led. $800 million at exit in 2019. Sold to a holding company out of Boston. The founder had stepped down within 90 days and disappeared from every list that mattered. Forbes had used the phrase vanished after personal tragedy and then stopped writing about him entirely. She pulled into the next lot. She saw a hardware store, gravel, and put the car in park. She called Devon, Cole and Hartwell Group. Pull everything. The founder. Photograph. Now. She waited 4 minutes with the engine running. Devon called back in 5. Nathan Cole, 40. Born Knoxville. Widower. Wife was Claire Cole, urban planner. Died February 2019, ovarian cancer. He sold the company that May, last public sighting late 2020. Moved to Asheville. There's almost no digital footprint after that. Just a state license for a cabinetry sole proprietorship out of Buncombe County. Adeline did not answer for a moment. She was looking, without meaning to, at her own hands on the wheel. "Boss," Devon said, "you want me to pull tax records?" "No." She watched a woman push a cart of mulch across the lot. Not yet. She opened her phone, pulled up Google Maps, and looked at the pin where Hatch's Corner sat. 1,800 square feet. Free and clear. A $9 breakfast. Why, she said quietly, to no one, would a man who sold an empire come back to a wooden counter every morning? That night the hotel room was too quiet. Adeline pushed the duvet back, opened the laptop, and worked her way through the old Cole and Hartwell coverage the way she worked through any rival's history, methodically, marking the margins. The Forbes profile from 2017 showed a man she barely recognized, same eyes, same jaw. But the smile in the photo was the smile of a person who had not yet been broken. She found the wife in the 3rd hour. Claire Cole, maiden name Hatcher. Urban planner with the city of Asheville from 2009 to 2016, then independent consulting. Cancer diagnosis October 2018, obituary in the Citizen Times. Survived by her husband Nathan and a daughter, Mia, then 4. Adeline read the obituary twice. A local lifestyle magazine had run a feature in 2014 on UNC Asheville alumni who had stayed in town. There she was, 23 years old, in a black and white shot at a counter Adeline now recognized. The caption read, "Claire Hatcher, Jr., helps her aunt at Hatch's Corner, a Patton Avenue mainstay since 1978. Her aunt, Marlene Hatch." Adeline scrolled further and found a wedding photograph from 2011. Claire in a simple ivory dress on the porch of the diner. Nathan beside her, 25, leaner in the shoulders, looking at her instead of at the camera. Marlene was in the background of the shot, holding a coffee pot. There was a second photograph beneath it. Claire in a hospital chair, a knitted cap, smiling at a child of 4. The caption gave only a date and a name. Mia, 2017. Adeline sat very still. The laptop fan whirred. Somewhere down the hallway a hotel ice machine dropped a load. She had laughed at a man for spending $9 on the breakfast his wife had served at 20. She thought of her own mother for the first time in months. Her mother had worked the 4 to midnight shift at a hospital cafeteria in Quincy until Adeline was 9. Adeline had built a career out of forgetting the steam tables and the burned coffee and the smell of bleach on a uniform that was never quite clean. She did not like remembering it. She did not like that she had remembered it tonight. She closed the laptop at 2:14 and lay flat on the bed without turning back the covers. She did not sleep. She watched the ceiling vent move air across a small piece of unraveling lint and waited for the gray light to come. At 7:40 the next morning her phone lit up. The video call icon. Garrett Voss, chairman of the board. 68. White hair cut to the millimeter. He never called before 9 unless he was angry. Adeline. Where are we on the patent block? Owner declined the first offer. I'll go again Thursday. Close it in 72 hours. Whatever it takes, Garrett. We don't have entitlements yet. We don't even have a survey back. 72 hours. Whatever the number. I want the paperwork on my desk Monday. Why the urgency? A pause. Just long enough. Just close it. He ended the call. Adeline set the phone down on the desk and looked at it for a full minute. In the board archive, she pulled the meeting minutes from January. Garrett had been the one to put Asheville on the expansion map. He had pushed it through Quan over the objection of 2 independent directors. He had named the patent block specifically. The minutes recorded a single sentence in his own remarks. There is a sentimental nuisance on the parcel that the right offer will resolve. Sentimental nuisance. She read it 3 times. She closed the laptop, dressed, and drove to the diner. She did not introduce herself this time. She took a stool at the far end of the counter, not Nathan's stool, and asked for coffee. Hannah brought it without a word. She didn't ask Adeline's name. She didn't ask what she wanted. She set the cup down, slid the cream pitcher within reach, and held Adeline's eyes for half a second longer than a stranger would have. The half-second said, I remember you. Adeline wrapped both hands around the cup and waited for 7 o'clock. The bell rang at 7. Nathan came in the way he always came in, like the door belonged to him and he was returning a favor by using it. He saw Adeline at the counter. He did not break stride. He took his usual stool, 2 down from hers, and nodded once. Morning. Morning. Hannah set the plate in front of him without being asked. Adeline let the coffee warm her palms for a long minute before she spoke. Cold front coming through tonight, they said. They did. Have you lived in Asheville long? Long enough. She tried again, gentler. It's a good diner. It is. She set the cup down. Why do you come every day? He cut into the egg, lifted the fork, set it down without eating. He looked at the back wall, a chalkboard with 3 specials in Marlene's slanted hand, and then at his plate. Habit, he said. He picked up the fork and ate. She did not push. For a long stretch they sat in the kind of silence that was not awkward, only full. The diner moved around them in its small rhythms. A truck driver at the end of the counter laughed at something he had not been told. Hannah refilled a pitcher of cream. A woman by the window opened the local paper to the obituaries and read them the way some people read poetry. Adeline turned the cup a quarter turn in its saucer. I came here thinking I knew what kind of town this was. Nathan did not look at her. What kind did you think it was? Slow. It is slow, he said. Slow isn't the same as easy. She let the sentence sit on the counter between them, like a third cup nobody had ordered. After a minute he glanced at her, just once. Not unkind. The look a man gives a stranger he has decided is worth a single second of his attention, and not yet a second more. You from up north? Charlotte. Originally Boston. Long drive for a diner. It is. He did not ask the next question. He went back to his plate. At 10:15 he stood, stretched once at the shoulder, and walked to the register. Hannah was already moving. She handed him a second white paper bag, folded twice at the top, taped once, with a Sharpie mark on the side that Adeline could not read from where she sat. 2 plates. He had ordered 2. Marlene came out of the kitchen as the bell over the door rang behind him. She wiped her hands on a towel and crossed to Adeline's end of the counter without making eye contact, then refilled the cup that didn't need refilling. What you said the other day, Marlene said quietly. You know now. Don't say it again. Adeline nodded. Slow. The nod cost her 2. I'm sorry. Marlene didn't answer. She took the coffee pot back to the warmer and disappeared into the kitchen. Through the window, Adeline watched the green Ford pull out of the lot, the second paper bag riding on the passenger seat the way the first had ridden the day before, with care, like something that might tip. She paid for the coffee and left a 20 under the cup. She gave him a 4-minute head start, then followed. He did not take the river road this time. He drove north, past the hospital, past the old depot, and turned at a hand-painted sign that read, Asheville Elementary Visitors Use Side Gate. She slowed, then parked half a block back behind a landscaping truck and cut the engine. The school had a side yard with a low chain-link fence and a single broad oak that must have been there since before the building. Under the oak, on a wooden bench painted forest green, a small girl in a red corduroy jacket was already sitting. Hair the color of his, a spiral-bound sketchbook open across her knees. She was drawing something with the stub of a pencil. Nathan walked across the grass without hurrying. The girl looked up and her whole face changed, quietly, the way a window changes when someone turns on the lamp inside. He sat down beside her. He opened the white bag. He took out 3 boxes. 3. He set one on Mia's knee. He set one on his own. The third he set on the bench between them. Beside the third box, from his jacket pocket, he placed a small wooden picture frame, no bigger than the palm of his hand, face turned toward the school. Adeline could not see the photograph from where she stood. She did not need to. Nathan reached out and rested 2 fingers on the top edge of the frame for a long moment. Then he picked up his fork. They ate without speaking. A sparrow dropped down onto the far end of the bench, half a wing beat from the third box. Mia watched it without moving. Nathan tore a corner off his biscuit and laid it on the wood. The sparrow hopped, took the crumb, and stayed. Mom would have named it, Mia said. She probably already did, Nathan said. From up there, Mia laughed, the small private laugh of a child who has heard her father say this before and likes hearing it again. She went back to drawing. Nathan ate slowly, his free hand resting on the bench an inch from the frame. Adeline stepped back behind the trunk of the oak across the street. She had brought her phone up halfway out of her coat pocket without thinking. She looked at the screen, dark. She slid it back. She did not take a photograph. She did not record. She did not even text Devon. She had been in 20 boardrooms in her career where she had been told a thing was confidential and had filed it anyway, because filing it was the work. She had never, until that moment under that oak, stood inside something private and felt the line between watching and trespassing move under her feet. She stood there until the recess bell rang and Mia stood up, kissed her father on the cheekbone, and ran back across the yard toward a teacher in a yellow vest. Nathan packed the boxes back into the bag. He left the third box on the bench. He left the frame. He walked to the truck without looking around. Adeline stayed where she was, one shoulder pressed to the bark. She had spent 11 years building deals out of buildings. She had never, until that morning, looked at a building and seen a person inside it she was not prepared to displace. She drove back to the rented office above the credit union on Biltmore Avenue without remembering the drive. Devon was at the desk with 3 browser windows open and the second of Garrett's morning emails already flagged red on her phone. "He's called twice," Devon said. "He says the seller is going to walk if we don't move." "The seller's a 62-year-old woman who told me no in her own diner, Devon. She's not walking, he's pushing." Devon looked at her. "Boss, pull every deal Garrett has personally sponsored in the last 15 years, especially anything in Western North Carolina. That's a lot of..." "Start." The intercom buzzed. The girl at the front desk, 22, New said, "There's a Miss Hatch here to see you." Adeline stood. Marlene came in with a manila envelope under one arm. She did not sit. She set the envelope on the desk in front of Adeline and rested both hands on the back of the visitor chair. "I wasn't going to bring this to anyone," Marlene said, "but you're chasing the wrong person for the wrong man. So here." Adeline opened the envelope. City of Asheville. Department of Planning. Public Minutes, June 2013. A zoning variance request for a mixed-use development at the corner of Haywood and State, West Asheville. The planner of record had recommended denial on 3 grounds: slope instability, watershed runoff into the Hominy Creek tributary, and a Section 406 floodplain violation. The planner's name at the bottom of the recommendation was Claire H. Cole. The applicant LLC was listed 2 pages further in. 2 layers of holding company. At the bottom of the disclosure stack, the beneficial owner, Voss Holdings, LC Principal, Garrett W. Voss. Adeline read it twice. "He lost $14 million on that parcel," Marlene said. "Sunk cost. He'd already bought the land at top of market. The denial put it in receivership. He never forgave her. He never forgave anybody." Adeline closed the folder. When Claire got sick, he wrote a sympathy card. Marlene saw it. Marlene threw it out. Then he waited. He waited 5 years. He couldn't reach Claire anymore, so he went after the rest of her. The diner, the recipe, the counter. The corner of town where she worked at 20. The last place on earth where her husband can still sit down and pretend she's about to come out of the kitchen with a coffee pot. Marlene's voice did not rise. It went lower. She made the Sunday plate when she was 20 years old. She taught it to me before she married Nathan. Every morning he comes in. He isn't eating breakfast, Miss Reeve. He's visiting his wife. Adeline did not move. She thought of the third box on the bench under the oak. She thought of the small wooden frame Nathan had set beside it without making a show of setting it down. She thought of her own voice in the diner the first morning, loud enough to carry. "You want to tear up the block? That's your business," Marlene said. "But don't let Garrett use your hands to do it." She turned and walked out without waiting for an answer. Adeline sat in the chair for a long time. The afternoon light moved a quarter of the way across the desk. She did not call Garrett. She did not call Devin back in. She opened her laptop, and she began an email to General Counsel. Subject line: Material conflict of interest. Patent block, Asheville. Source documents attached. She did not send a copy to the chairman. She flew back to Charlotte that night. The plane was half empty. She had flown the route 40 times and had never noticed the way the lights of Asheville fell away. As the aircraft turned east, small clusters of yellow against the ridges. The river, a thin black ribbon. She had always worked on the takeoff. Tonight, she sat with her hands in her lap and watched the window until the cabin lights came up. By morning, General Counsel had the file. By noon, Adeline had requested an emergency board meeting for the following Tuesday. Citing material conflict of interest discovered, Garrett's name appeared on the routing slip, as protocol required. He called her on the way to lunch. "Don't go down this road, kid. Garrett, you won the chair 2 years ago because I gave it to you. I can take it back the same way." "Then take it," she said, and ended the call. She did not eat lunch. She walked. The Reeve Hospitality Tower stood at the corner of Tryon and 5th, 22 stories of polished granite. She crossed the street to clear her head and was halfway down the block before she saw him. Nathan was at the curb in the green Ford, tailgate down. He was lifting a sideboard cabinet, solid walnut, hand-finished, brass pulls out of the bed and onto a dolly. 2 doormen waited to take it. He had not looked up. He did not know whose building it was. She stopped on the sidewalk. Cars passed. A bus hissed at the light. He saw her then. He set the cabinet down on the dolly with the care he set everything down with. He straightened. The sawdust was on his forearms again. He looked at her the way he had looked at her across the counter the first morning, before he had known her name and before she had known anything. "Diner woman," he said. It was not unkind. It was not warm either. It was the flat, level voice of a man who had been told the truth too many times to be surprised by anyone. "I know who you are now," she said. "I know who she was." He looked away. Across the intersection, the crosswalk countdown reached 0 and reset. "Some plates aren't about the price, Miss Reeve." He looked back. "They're about who set them down." He did not ask her what she had done with what she knew. He did not ask her what she intended to do. He nodded once, the same nod he gave Hannah every morning at the register. The same nod he gave the sparrow on the bench, and he closed the tailgate, signed the doorman's clipboard, and climbed into the cab. She stood on the sidewalk for 5 minutes after the Ford turned out of sight. A woman in a Reeve hospitality uniform came out to ask if she was all right. Adeline did not hear the question the first time. The second time she said yes, thank you, and walked back to the lobby through the revolving door. The cabinet was already in place against the wall behind the concierge desk. It looked as if it had been there since the building was built. Adeline ran her hand along the top edge without thinking. The wood was warm, she thought, without wanting to, about the small white scar at the knuckle of his left thumb. Then she went back upstairs and finished the deck for Tuesday. The boardroom on the 22nd floor held 9 seats and a single long table of African mahogany. Garrett sat at the head. He had worn his best Navy suit. He smiled at the independent directors as they came in. The directors took their places without speaking. Imani Park, who would later move the vote, set a yellow legal pad squarely in front of her and uncapped a fountain pen. The 2 outside counsel sat against the wall. A junior associate from General Counsel slid a small black recorder onto the table and pressed a single button. Adeline did not sit. She opened with the zoning denial from 2013. She walked them through the holding company stack. She put the Voss Holdings name on the screen and left it there for a full 10 seconds. "This expansion was sponsored by the chairman," she said. "The target parcel houses a business owned by the aunt of the planner who denied his application 12 years ago. The chairman has personally directed me to close the acquisition within 72 hours at any price. Garrett pushed back from the table. This is an ambush. From a CEO who has been in the chair for 2 years, against a chairman who has built this company for 19. I am presenting facts. You are presenting a personal grudge against me dressed up as a memo. I am presenting, Adeline said, and clicked to the next slide. An internal email from your office dated 4 weeks ago, instructing a contracted consulting firm to convey to Miss Marlene Hatch that her food service permit was under review by the county. The county confirms in writing that no such review exists. A murmur ran along the table. Garrett looked at the directors he had personally recruited. 2 of them did not meet his eyes. The third, a man named Ellis from the Atlanta family office side, leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. And finally, she said. She clicked once more. An audio waveform. A transcript on the right, Garrett's voice. Tinny but clear. I don't care how you do it. Tell her the permit's gone. Tell her the inspector found mouse droppings. I don't care. She sells by Monday, or she loses everything she has. The recording ran for 40 seconds. Nobody at the table looked at Garrett while it played. When it ended, the only sound in the room was the air handler in the ceiling. Adeline did not say anything else. The lead independent director, a woman named Imani Park, who had survived 2 CEOs and 3 recessions, set her pen down. I move, she said, that we suspend the chairman pending external investigation, terminate the patent block acquisition, and authorize the chief executive officer to restructure the Asheville strategy under her own judgment. The second came from the director to her left. The vote was 7-2. Garrett stood up. He did not look at Adeline. He gathered his portfolio, buttoned his jacket, and walked out of the room without speaking. The door closed behind him with the soft click of expensive hardware. The room emptied slowly. Adeline stayed in her chair after the others had gone. She looked out the window at the Charlotte skyline and waited to feel something like victory. It did not come. What came instead was the memory of a small wooden frame on a green bench under an oak tree and a man who had not asked her, at any point, to do any of this. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, the bell over the door at Hatch's Corner rang at 6:58. The weather had turned. The first cold front of October had come down off the Blue Ridge in the night, and the air in the parking lot had a clean knife edge to it. Inside, the diner smelled the way diners only smell in autumn: coffee, bacon, butter, and the warm wool of regulars who had pulled out their jackets for the first time that year. Hannah was at the register. She looked up. She did not smile exactly. She nodded the small, quiet nod of someone acknowledging a regular. Adeline took the stool at the far end of the counter, not Nathan's. The one next to his. She set her keys down on the wood. She did not check her phone. The phone had been on Do Not Disturb since she had left Charlotte the night before. Her assistant did not know where she was. The board did not know. For the first Saturday in 11 years, she was nowhere anyone could find her by typing her name into a calendar. Marlene came out of the kitchen with her apron damp at the hem. She did not look surprised to see Adeline. She did not look pleased either. She looked like a woman who had been expecting weather and had finally seen the clouds arrive. Sunday plate? Marlene said. 1. Marlene nodded and went back through the swinging door. Hannah poured the coffee without being asked. She set the cream pitcher inside arm's reach, the way she had set it the morning Adeline had taken a stool at this counter as a stranger. She did not linger. At 7, the bell rang. Nathan came in. He saw her. He did not pause. He took his stool. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, a delivery truck eased into the lot. A regular at the far end of the counter slid a folded newspaper across to a friend. The griddle hissed. 2 plates came out together. 2 eggs, a slice of country ham, a buttered biscuit, a single thin disc of apple, $9 each. Adeline opened her mouth. I owe you. You owed her, Nathan said, without looking up. You paid it. They ate. The diner sounded the way the diner always sounded. Forks on white ceramic. The hiss of the griddle. Hannah, laughing at something irregular, said 3 stools down, coffee being poured into a cup that did not need it. Halfway through the meal, Nathan reached for the salt at the same moment Adeline did. Their fingers did not touch. He moved his hand back first, set the shaker an inch closer to her, and went on eating. Nathan finished. He stood, He walked to the register, took the second bag from Hannah, and stopped at the door with his hand on the brass push plate. He turned his head, half over his shoulder. "Mia draws birds on Saturdays," he said. "Bench by the school. 8 o'clock. The bell rang behind him. Adeline sat at the counter and finished her coffee. Out the window, the oaks along Patton Avenue were beginning to gold at the tips. It was the first autumn in 11 years she had stayed somewhere not because of a deal. 14 months later, on the first Saturday of May, the back garden behind Hatch's Corner held 30 folding chairs in 2 short rows. Marlene had given the garden for the morning and refused to be paid for it. There were no photographers. There were no centerpieces. The tables were the long pine tables Nathan had built himself, set with white linen and white tea roses in canning jars. Garrett Voss had been formally removed by the board 4 months after the vote. The external investigation had taken its time. Adeline had bought Hatch's Corner from Reeve Hospitality with her own money at fair market value the week after the suspension, and signed 100% of it into a community trust in Marlene's name. The trust deed forbade the sale of the property to any commercial developer for 25 years. Mia, 9.5, walked down the grass aisle first. The sketchbook was tucked under her left arm the way it always was. With her right hand she scattered apple blossoms from a small woven basket. Marlene had cut them at dawn from the old tree behind the kitchen. The petals fell white and uneven and beautiful. Adeline came down the aisle next. Her hair was up. Her eyes were calm in a way that the boardroom had never seen. Marlene walked beside her not because Adeline had no father, but because the person who walked her down today needed to be a woman who had known Claire. On a small side table at the front, beside the officiant's book, Nathan had set the wooden picture frame. He had placed it there at sunrise. The photograph faced the chairs. Adeline reached the table and paused. She did not speak. She rested 2 fingers on the top edge of the frame for the length of a breath. Then she walked the last 3 steps to where Nathan stood. The vows were short. "I stopped looking a long time ago," Nathan said. His voice was the voice of a man at a counter at 7 in the morning. "You didn't ask me to look. You just sat down." Adeline's voice did not shake. "I came for a building. I stayed for a bench." After the ceremony, the guests sat. Marlene came out of the kitchen carrying a tray. The wedding breakfast was the only thing on the menu. Plate after plate of 2 eggs, a slice of country ham, a buttered biscuit, a single thin disc of apple. On every plate, tucked under the rim, was a small folded card in Marlene's slanted hand. $9. The price of remembering. Mia tugged on Adeline's sleeve halfway through the meal. She looked up with the small, serious face she had worn since she was 4. "Can I call you something now?" Adeline looked across at Nathan. Nathan nodded once small, the way he nodded at everything that mattered. "Whatever feels right," Adeline said. "When you're ready." Mia thought about it. She went back to her plate. A sparrow dropped down onto the edge of the table, took a crumb of biscuit from beside Nathan's hand, and lifted off again through the young leaves of the oak. The camera, if there had been one, would have pulled up then. A small garden behind a Patton Avenue diner. 30 chairs. A wooden frame on a side table beside the officiant's book. May sunlight falling through the leaves of the old oak in coins of soft gold across the white linen. Neither of them had been looking. But some mornings, $9 buys back a name the world almost forgot and writes a new one beside it.